This is how you can create Amalfi wind. So I like to do first is get my brush wet in this is an old flower vase, but it can be a cup of water, whatever you want. And then I'll dab it on a paper towel to kind of get some of the excess moisture out. I'll choose a base layer color. So I usually like to start with something pretty bold, but I'll dilute it with water. And you can either, you can put it on a sketchbook page to see how it'll look first before, or you can just go for it. And typically I just kind of go for it if I know that it's the color that I want. And with this thick paper, it'll suck up the water. So it's really nice when you have color and paint that you can kind of work with. So you can put a lot of water on this because it's watercolor paper. And it's actually handmade paper, which I really love. But for me, I like to kind of do a swooping motion, and I use the square of the paper a lot of the time as my borders. But also I don't. It's kind of whatever I think the piece needs. And I'll just work it in over and over again. And then I'll clean off my brush because I don't want the other colors to mix in with my brush, because if I use too many colors and don't clean off my brush, then it'll get really gross and yucky, and the colors will just kind of turn brown no matter what. It always goes to brown. So I'll clean it off, and then I'll maybe use this color, but I'm not sure if I want it, so I'm going to test it here. I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm just going to kind of work it on this smaller space to see what it's going to look like. And I like it, but I don't think that's what I want to use. I think instead I want to use something lighter. So I'll test this out. Yes, that's what I want to use. So I'm going to use this by itself right now. And instead of a brush for this one, I'm going to take one of my handy scrapers. I don't know the technical term for it, and I'll scrape instead. And what's fun is it'll grab some of the other colors along with it if it's not dry. And that's what I want with this first layer, because I want it to kind of all flow together. And if I don't have enough water, I'll grab a brush and I'll add some water to it to make it smoother, and then I'll scrape again. And then I'll just kind of work with it. I'll let it dry. And sometimes I like to scrape it all the way off the paper so that it looks like it's starting from somewhere else and landed here on its own. And then I will wipe this. Usually, honestly, I'll just wipe it on my pants. I also like to add a lot of layers. So I'm gonna put a lot of this paint mixed with a little bit of this color, because I want it to make a little bit of a bold statement, but I want it to have a happy medium. So I'll just kind of mix, and then I'll take this and I will layer it on top. And because this is a different size, it'll do a very different gesture. And I will take this and I'll just make it chunky. And I like the way that it's not mixing with the other colors, because it gets to stand on its own. And I love the way it looks with this, with the blue, and then it looks different with this, with the more skin tone pink peach. And then I'll go as wide as I think I need it to go. And then I'll let it dry. I love using pencil on top, because pencil you can also erase if you need to. But typically I like to start in the middle of something that feels strong, and I like my pencil movements to come out of that. So, and I'm really bad at doing straight lines. Sometimes it breaks. That's because I was pressing really hard on it, but it's great. So I like to have the movement continue with the flow of the piece and whatever that looks like. And then, you know, it's not going to be perfect the first time, so I like to take other colors too and fill it in on how I think I want it to look. And this one's really fun because it's a green color that mixes well. And because of this paper is so thick, my paint dried quicker than it normally does. Then I'll go on top. And then I always like pairs of things because I think we find pairs all over the place, and so I like to have my lines be in pairs. And sometimes they'll go hand in hand, and sometimes they'll interlap over each other. It just depends on if it fits in the piece or not. I feel like the piece will tell me if it needs to be that way or not. So this one, well, watch out, your pencils may break, but that's okay. This one will be kind of a mixture of both. I'll probably use a blue to go in this blue right here, and I will really subtly add in some lines because it gives it a lot of depth that otherwise isn't really there to me. But that's the alphabet that I use and the language I like to use and what feels right in my painting. It doesn't have to feel right for everyone else's. And I'll kind of stop there to make it feel like it's disappearing behind the red. And then I'll pick it back up over here. Ooh, and it kind of mixed with red, but I like it. And I wasn't expecting that. I'll pick it up over here so it looks like it's happening throughout the entire painting. Because this one is still wet, I'm going to hang it to dry, and I'm actually going to take this piece that's been drying for a few days, and I'm going to work on this one instead, and I'm going to hang this up in its place so that it can dry, so that I don't mix the colors all up. So this is a completed painting, and when I know that it's completed is when it feels full and it feels like there's nothing else that I really want to do to it. A lot of the time I don't know if a painting's finished, and I can sometimes get over excited about it and I end up going too far with it, and so I'll need to restart. But other times, if I'm not sure if it's finished or not, I'll live with it for a little bit. I'll just put it somewhere in my house where I have to walk by it every single day. And if there's something that I keep thinking about that I should add, then I'll add it. Or if I can live with it and I actually think it's finished after a few days, weeks, months of living with it, then I will stop. And for this painting and for most of my paintings, I like to seal it with sealant, with different varnish. So you can do gloss varnish, you can do matte. It depends on what kind of finish you want on top. I really like on my canvas pieces to do a gloss varnish because it makes the colors pop a little more and it gives them a bit of a shine. And so this one I've already varnished, and then I always sign it. And some people like to sign their paintings on the back. Some people like to sign it on the front. I think it's up to you. I like to sign it on the front because I always like to know who does their paintings. So I give people the option to see that this one's mine. But yeah, that's how I finish a painting. Okay, so with a paper piece, after I know it's finished and I know there's nothing else I want to add to it, I really like the way it looks. I want to protect the paper because if you don't, it'll get scratched, or you can tear it, or if you just throw it in a backpack, then it can get crinkly, and I don't want that to happen because I just worked really hard on it. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can preserve it. You can put it in a bag with a piece of cardboard or something that's flat so that it can keep the paper flat in the bag. And I buy these plastic bags at an art store, but you can also just use paper too with a piece of cardboard behind it to support it so that it stays flat. And then I like to put a plastic on top of it so that nothing touches the painting, so that nothing can get on the actual paper and mess it up. And then I will just make sure to keep it in a safe place. And that's how I protect my paintings. So I'm really excited to see what art is going to be made for ARTOBER Nashville this year, with artists all over the city and what all you guys are going to do. You can check out more events, and you can check out Amalfi Win on ARTOBER Nashville's website at www.artobernashville.com.